Florida has long been one of the places where wild hog populations grow rapidly. Over the past few weeks, Patricia has repeatedly discovered fresh tracks around pasture areas, livestock feeding sites, and trails leading toward the forest edge. Their frequency has increased noticeably, making farm management more challenging. After many days of monitoring, she decided to contact us to help inspect the circular net trap systems that had been installed along key travel routes. Unlike many conventional traps, this system is designed to guide entire groups of hogs into an enclosed netted area through a special entrance. Once they move deep inside, finding the exact way back out is no longer easy. No one knows what each trap might reveal after a single night. Around midnight, the monitoring system sent a signal showing that the first trap had been triggered. Although she was eager to check it immediately, Patricia decided to wait until daylight to ensure safety and allow for a clearer assessment of the scene. Early the next morning, the entire team arrived at the first location. The signs on the ground showed that an entire group of hogs had moved through during the night. It partially confirmed that the travel route Patricia had been tracking for days was absolutely accurate. The workday began with high expectations. If the first trap showed that the system was working effectively, the next inspection point surprised everyone even more. Even from a considerable distance away, we could see far more movement inside the enclosure than usual. As we approached, Patricia smiled quietly. This was clearly the result she had been hoping for over the past several days. The number of hogs inside the netted enclosure far exceeded initial expectations. The team quickly divided tasks, prepared guiding lanes, and coordinated to move each group out of the enclosure in a controlled manner. The workload was heavier than expected, but everyone felt that the days of scouting and preparation had paid off. The next trap brought a different kind of challenge. The moment the hogs detected human presence, they became highly alert and continuously moved around the enclosure searching for a way out. Patricia reminded everyone to stay in position and avoid getting too close. Wild animals can react unpredictably when they feel cornered, so every action had to be carried out calmly and according to plan. The moment once again demonstrated how important field experience truly is. After two particularly busy inspection points, the fourth trap delivered a completely different result. Only a single animal was recorded inside the enclosure. Patricia did not seem disappointed. She believed it reflected the natural behavior of wild hogs. They often change group size and travel routes depending on environmental conditions. That is also why no two traps ever produce exactly the same outcome. Just as the team thought most of the work was finished, Patricia brought us to a trap located near an area where numerous juvenile tracks had previously been recorded. She hoped this location would provide more insight into how the herd had been moving in recent days. The inspection revealed multiple animals of different sizes inside the netted enclosure. The amount of work required the team to coordinate even more closely than at the previous locations. Patricia constantly communicated with everyone to ensure every step followed the plan. Although it took considerable time, it also became one of the most informative inspections regarding how the hogs travel together in groups. The final trap was recorded by the system as being activated during the night. When we arrived the following morning, Patricia was already there. She had finished inspecting the site, documenting tracks, and preparing everything for the team. Looking at the notebook filled with travel routes, appearance times, and weather conditions, we understood why she was often able to predict so accurately where the hogs would return. Behind every successful inspection lies not only the trap itself, but also countless hours of observation, record keeping, and patience in the field. A day of work alongside Patricia came to an end as the sun slowly sank over the Florida grasslands. What stayed with us most was not the number recorded at each trap, but the way she patiently followed every footprint, every trail, and every subtle environmental change. It was that patience that helped the entire team better understand the behavior of wild hogs and why every field inspection continues to bring unexpected discoveries. And perhaps that is also why we are always willing to return to Florida for another journey in the future.
No one makes a big decision at the very beginning. For nearly 3 weeks, the farm owner kept enduring. Night after night, the wild boars came down. Not noisy, not rushed. They simply appeared in silence and left behind plowed up rows of crops, patches of earth torn apart. A scene of devastation that would pain any farmer to witness. At first, it was just a few footprints, then small damaged patches, until one corner of the farm was almost wiped out in a single night. We knew we couldn't stand by any longer, and began taking the first steps to protect this land, this once peaceful life of the people. Instead of intervening immediately, we chose to step back. The boars only return when they feel safe. So for the first few days, we set no traps. We laid bait, corn, grains, molasses, the scent of food to draw them in. Each night, the bait was placed in the same spot. The goal was clear, to build a habit. After a few nights, the signs began to change. The number of tracks increased. The ground was churned deeper, and the time of appearance became almost fixed during the night. When the herd had grown accustomed to the area, we knew the moment had come. The next day, we set up a large trap system right where the boars usually appeared, scattering bait from the outside inward like a natural path. No forcing, no pressure. As night fell, everything was ready, and all we could do was wait. Near midnight, the first movements appeared. No panic, no suspicion, until suddenly, the trap mechanism snapped shut with a dry click. In an instant, everything was contained inside. Metal rattled, feet pounded violently. Repeated impacts slammed into the steel frame, throwing the entire trap into chaos. The first night began like that. A success. following days, things began to accelerate. On another night, a larger herd appeared. Not just adults, even a young followed inside. That showed the herd had fully adapted to the area. When the trap fell, a large group was captured all at once. The Boars panicked, rushing in search of an escape, but against the solid frame, every effort quickly became futile. That night ended there. We didn't rush to remove the traps, knowing there were still others lurking nearby. And we were right. The next morning, at another hot spot, a different scene unfolded. Even from a distance, we could hear it. The clash of metal, the heavy breathing of wild boars, relentless movement. Inside the trap was a herd with varied coat colors. Some dark, almost black, others grayish-brown, a few with spotted fur. This wasn't just a small, isolated group. It was multiple groups sharing the same feeling. And that was exactly why the damage had stretched on us. We continued increasing the number of traps. In the nights that followed, a few more individuals were caught. Not as many as before, but enough to show the herd had not yet stopped. The peak came on a night of full moon. A massive herd appeared, larger than any before, filing into the trap along the same familiar path, without the slightest doubt. We held our breath, watching, waiting for the exact moment. As the last one stepped inside, the signal was triggered. The trap slammed shut. Metal rang sharply through the night. Inside, chaos erupted instantly. The boars collided, charged into the frame, dust rising thick into the air. They searched for a way out, but it was meaningless. The resistance weakened, then slowly faded. Under the pale moonlight, the entire herd was contained. Only then did I let out a breath. Not a feeling of victory, but relief. That we had finally managed to stop part of the herd that had been tearing this land apart. The next morning, the task was no longer observation. It was handling. Transport was carried out carefully, keeping distance, minimizing stress. We used a transport vehicle and created a guided path so the boars could step up voluntarily. The adult individuals, the ones responsible for the heaviest damage, were prioritized as they were the ones that returned repeatedly and caused the most destruction. When it was all over, the farm slowly became quiet again. No more dense footprints, no more torn fields each morning. But the most important thing wasn't the number we controlled, it was how we did it. Not rushed, not random, but observed long enough to act at the right moment. So what do you think? When managing wild boars, is it better to patiently build a pattern and lure them in? Or intervene immediately at the first signs? Leave your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow us for the next journeys. We didn't rush into control efforts for the sake of results. This was a long-term effort to restore peace to this place, including my uncle's family life. The entire morning was spent working with nearby landowners and reviewing local regulations. Permits, restricted zones, livestock protection measures, everything had to be completed properly. A mistake would not only lead to failure, it would also be irresponsible. Every action had to remain within the law and follow responsible wildlife management practices. Then came a reconnaissance phase. For 7 consecutive nights, we did nothing but observe through infrared lenses. Footprints, mud patches, movement hours, every habit of the wild boars was mapped and recorded. Our goal was to control and manage the herd scientifically, protecting crops, livestock, and community safety while minimizing unnecessary risk. Next came the most patience-testing stage, pre-bait. There was absolutely no room for cheap tricks. We used clean fermented corn, a scent no wild boar can resist. By creating a consistent feeding habit, we could gather the herd in an orderly way, preventing environmental disturbance and reducing the chance of them moving to other farms and causing new damage. Day 3, they only stood at a distance, sniffing cautiously. Day 5, the boldest ones began tasting. We kept observing until day 10. Hunger had defeated caution. They returned again and again, treating the place like their own safe dining ground. And when wild boars lose their guard, that is when the smart traps enter their waiting stage. That night was the decisive moment. Camera systems streamed live footage back to the control center. We had deployed a network of traps suited to each terrain and herd size. In the large open field, a massive corral trap waited silently. Near the forest edge in a narrower area, a solid hexagonal trap stood ready. And along a narrow trail, a box trap sat firmly in position. Every trap in the system had been selected for safety, durability, and the ability to hold the herd steadily without causing unnecessary harm. The herd began entering the bait zone, dark shapes filling the monitor. My finger rested on the trigger button. My heart matched the rhythm of the footsteps. But I waited. A few were still wandering outside the perimeter. If I triggered the traps too early, they would escape and become far more cautious in the future. So I held my breath. Finally, hunger won. Now, the circular trap gate slammed down. On the adjacent screens, the hexagonal trap and box trap were also triggered as the herd moved fully inside. The sound of metal crashing echoed through the night. Once the system was activated, the herd reacted instinctively, moving intensely inside the trap zones. Thanks to the strong, standard-compliant design, everything remained under control. These traps were built to maintain stability under all conditions. The strength of steel became a shield protecting the peace of the fields. The full herd control strategy had succeeded. The efforts of the entire village were finally protected. After tonight, the village could sleep peacefully again. My uncle and I drove the Gladiator through the night before the siren, but we didn't go there to celebrate. This was the moment to collect the most important data: the exact trigger time, the number of individuals captured, and the movement routes the herd had just revealed. Protecting crops is a community effort. These findings would be shared with neighboring farms, so they could adjust their own strategies, because wild boars constantly move across different lands. And so tonight, the cornfields were finally at peace. Tomorrow morning, when the sun rises, a humane processing procedure will be carried out in accordance with biosecurity standards. Protecting the environment, safeguarding livestock, and ensuring human safety always remain the top priorities. Because in the end, our goal is not just to react day by day. It is to build a long-term management system, responsible population control, proactive monitoring, and ecological balance. That is the sustainable solution for protecting crops and ensuring a safe coexistence between humans and nature. I started with the most traditional methods: one-way steel cage traps and small drop traps. The location was carefully chosen, the edge of dense brush, where deep tracks pressed into the still wet mud confirmed the presence of wild boars. The trap itself was modest in size, about 1 meter wide and nearly 2 meters long, designed only for single targets. Golden corn kernels were scattered with precision, forming a trail that lured them from the narrow entrance all the way to the darkest corner inside. After days of conditioning them, the result fell far short of expectations. Only a single, solitary boar was caught. These small traps quickly revealed their limitations. When I reviewed the camera footage from one of the drop traps, my heart sank. The boars had indeed shown up. They approached slowly, cautiously, even stepping deep inside the trap. But only a few were captured. The rest lingered just outside the perimeter, watching their trap companions with cold, unreadable eyes before slipping back into the darkness. The plan had completely failed. I had no choice but to adapt. I switched to a larger drop trap system. At around 4:30 in the morning, a sharp, hollow sound echoed. The gate slammed shut, but once again, disappointment followed. Only one had failed to escape. The boars had grown smarter with every close call. This confrontation was becoming more intense than ever. Refusing to back down against their cunning, I shifted operations to the eastern wetlands, a low, damp area rich with activity. A massive steel enclosure was constructed, reinforced with a solid frame, measuring up to 4 by 8 meters. It was large enough to contain an entire group. The bait, rich with strong scent attractants, began to take effect. These were dominant males, over 100 kilograms, with massive builds and hides as tough as armor. Hunger began to dull their instincts. Greed slowly overpowered caution. Step by heavy step, they moved deeper into the trap, unaware that the final gate was already waiting. 2:35 a.m. The alarm device vibrated relentlessly in my hand. I slammed the gas pedal, and my Jeep Wrangler pickup tore through dense brush, ripping apart the night mist. The tension was overwhelming. As I got closer, I raised a high-powered flashlight and aimed it straight into the center of the trap. Inside the cage, pairs of glowing eyes reflected back, fierce, aggressive. Low growls rumbled as a warning. Seeing that, an overwhelming sense of relief washed over me. All the worry, exhaustion, and sleepless nights of waiting had finally paid off. Dawn began to break, the fog slowly lifting. I moved deeper into the forest to check the secondary traps set along a dry creek bed. What appeared before me was pure chaos. For wild boars were completely trapped, an old sow weighing around 80 kilograms, along with her growing offspring, crammed into the tight space. They lunged repeatedly at the steel mesh, their long snouts slamming hard against the frame in desperation. Every attempt to dig their way out was futile against the reinforced locking system and dense steel wiring. Building on previous experience and success, an open plain near the edge of an oak forest, I decided to deploy my ace card, a modular smart trap system. White steel panels, tightly connected yet highly flexible to assemble and adjust. An entire family of black wild boars, from aggressive dominant males to half-grown juveniles, was now fully contained within the steel enclosure. The most destructive intruders had been completely subdued, a decisive victory for persistence. The final phase, transport, began with absolute focus. A specialized trailer over 4 meters long was backed tightly against the exit gate of the trap, forming a continuous passage. My partner and I stood on both sides, holding the guiding panels firmly in place. The sliding gate opened. The boars, cornered, had no choice but to surge forward onto the trailer. The final lock snapped shut. The entire destructive herd had been removed from the farm, restoring peace to the fields. This battle against wild boars was never just about strength. It was about the combination of modern trapping technology and the resolve of farming. Understanding behavior, patient observation, and decisive action. Those are the keys to protecting one's livelihood. As the vehicle disappeared beyond the tree line, I knew I had fulfilled my duty to protect this land with full responsibility and determination. I followed Mr. Harry, a longtime hunter living in the rural outskirts of Texas. Here, people do not hunt wild hogs for excitement, but to protect what remains of their fields after the destruction these animals leave behind. Wild hogs are not simply wild animals. They are the result of crossbreeding, which has made them remarkably intelligent. They remember trails, the smell of food, even the daily habits of villagers. Once they escape danger, given the chance, the herd will quietly return. They become more cautious, more cunning, and harder to control. Mr. Harry and the surrounding residents carefully chose to use large steel cage traps. Only this method can capture an entire herd at once. Wild hogs are incredibly strong. With simple traps, they would easily break free and escape. This hunt is a quiet plan. Steel traps prepared in advance and placed with careful calculation. Setting these steel traps is far from simple. The location we chose was along one of their familiar paths, close to the place where they usually linger the longest. A round steel trap typically has a diameter of about 10 meters and stands 2 meters high, firmly anchored into the ground. The drop gate is designed to trigger automatically at the exact moment when the entire herd has entered. A motion-sensing camera recorded them coming to feed and leaving safely between 1 and 3 a.m. The leading hogs, weighing more than 100 kilograms, would move first along their usual route, crossing small ditches before entering the field. The purpose was to let the herd gradually believe that the area was safe to feed. After several nights of waiting, on the third night, Mr. Harry sat quietly in his pickup truck, holding a remote control device. He watched the trap through a camera screen mounted inside it. The hogs entered slowly. The lead boar circled cautiously along the edge of the trap, sniffing the air. I held my breath as I watched. Inside the trap, fermented corn had been scattered, releasing a strong scent that could draw the herd from afar. Then another hog stepped in, and soon the rest of the herd followed behind. When the last one lowered its head to eat, Mr. Harry tightened his grip on the remote and acted. A loud bang shattered the stillness of the night. The gate dropped, locking the entire herd inside. Everything happened in just a few seconds. The trapdoor slammed down so quickly that the hogs did not even realize they had been caught. Panic erupted as they charged against the steel mesh, searching for an escape. Their squeals echoed across the area as dust rose from the ground. The trap shook violently, but the entire herd was already enclosed with no way out. When the crashing and squealing slowly faded, we knew that the battle of patience that had lasted several nights had finally come to an end. Hunting wild hogs in this region has never been the work of Mr. Harry's family alone. Every household here holds a role. Every field is part of the challenge. When traps close across the night, it is not only the result of a plan, but the coordination of an entire community protecting their land. At dawn the next morning, we used a trailer attached to a specialized steel transport cage to move the captured hogs. They were guided along a prepared path into the sturdy, enclosed cage. Part of the wild hog meat would be used for barbecue gatherings or sent to farms as food. The rest would be disposed of according to local regulations to prevent the spread of disease. Mr. Harry walked through the field again. The soil that had been torn apart was leveled and the irrigation system repaired. He said that this hunt did not mean the problem was finished. Wild hogs reproduce rapidly, 2 litters a year, for piglets each time. This is a long war. After the trapping operation, the cameras recorded no new herds entering the area for several weeks. The fields were quiet again, and neighbors suffered fewer losses. Hunting wild hogs not only protects crops, but also helps maintain the ecological balance of the region. If their numbers grow too quickly, they can destroy habitats, compete with native wildlife for food, and spread unfamiliar diseases to livestock. After the hunt with Mr. Harry, what stayed with me was not the sound of the traps slamming shut, but the way he looked at his land. To him, hunting wild hogs is not a pastime. It is the responsibility of a farmer who lives from the soil. I realized that to solve a big problem, you must first understand its causes and habits. It requires patience and careful preparation rather than rushing into action. Across the vast lands of Texas, where fields stretch all the way to the horizon, I understood that every peaceful night is not something that happens by chance. It is the result of responsibility and a silent trap prepared at the right moment. Rather than confronting them head-on, the trap was set at a natural exit point. A movement corridor the herd had no choice but to cross if they continued forward. This was not where they caused disruption, but where they moved in the most familiar and predictable way. The traditional corral trap was designed as an open control ring. Its structure allowed the boars to approach naturally, without sudden pressure, without disrupting the herd's existing order. That key element made the control process safer and more effective. The value of the trap did not lie in how many animals were contained, but in where the herd was brought under control. When the trap was triggered, the process unfolded quietly. No loud noises, no disturbance to the sleeping neighborhood. The herd was held within a space large enough to maintain order, yet separated enough to fully isolate the risk. Instead of spreading outward, the danger was contained at a clearly defined control point. At that moment, the trap was no longer merely a tool for holding animals. It became a strategic checkpoint where the safety of the community was protected through calculated control. Once the trap had done its job, an important decision was made: no on-site handling. Keeping wild boars too long near residential areas can create secondary risks: odor, noise, unnecessary curiosity, and crowds gathering. The trap remained intact, functioning as a stable protective unit throughout transport. The route was carefully selected, avoiding densely populated zones and any factor that might cause disturbance. This was the stage demanding the highest discipline. A single small mistake during transport could undo the entire chain of control established beforehand. Only after the herd had been moved away from the residential area did the real handling begin. At this point, the story was no longer about confrontation or prevention, but about responsibility in using a food resource safely and meaningfully. The wild boar meat was cleaned and carefully sorted, with any unsuitable portions removed. Every step adhered strictly to hygiene and food safety principles. Different cuts were prepared into nutritious meals. Lean portions were steamed or boiled to preserve their natural flavor. Energy-rich cuts were slow stewed to support heavy labor. The entire process followed a sustainable mindset: no waste, no harm, no additional risk to the community. This was not the end of a control operation. It was how people take responsibility for what they have chosen to do. The next morning, the neighborhood returned to its normal rhythm. No new tracks, no lingering unease. Few people knew that just hours earlier, A precise chain of decisions had prevented a threat from spiraling beyond control. And what matters most is that the story did not end when the trap was activated. It extended through every step, positioning correctly, containing risk in the right place, disciplined transport, safe handling, and responsible use. Preventing disaster is not about the most forceful action. It is about a chain of correct decisions, from the first trap to the final meal. This place had been ravaged by wild boars many times. Fields were torn apart, fences broken down, and the damage repeated season after season. Small traps only managed to catch a few animals, while the rest of the herd quickly learned to avoid them and became more cunning with time. We could no longer deal with the problem in scattered ways. Together with the farmers in the area, we agreed to build a large trap, strong enough to capture the entire herd at once. It was a collective decision by the whole community to put an end to the long chain of destruction. As evening approached, while the sunlight was still strong enough, we began building the trap. Heavy steel mesh panels were carried out and assembled into a tightly sealed circle. Each joint was tightened carefully and driven deep into the dry ground. The sound of hammers striking metal echoed sharply through the quiet air. From the outside, it looked like nothing more than a cold iron frame. But in reality, it was a giant lock waiting for the right moment to close. Once the trap enclosure was secured, we installed infrared cameras around the area, mounting them high on tree trunks to monitor the entire trail leading inside. Everything was done quickly and carefully. We minimized human traces and left early so that our scent could fade away in the wind. The final step was baiting the trap. Bags of corn were opened, their sweet scent drifting through the late afternoon air. We scattered the corn to create a faint trail leading gradually toward the center of the trap. The middle was where the bait was placed the heaviest. Step by step, the herd would be drawn deeper inside without realizing it. When everything was finished, the trap area fell silent again. Only the faint smell of corn lingered in the house. And somewhere in the forest, sensitive noses had already begun to catch the scent. When night fell, the forest seemed perfectly still, but none of us truly felt at ease. Then suddenly, movement appeared on the screen. The wild boars had arrived. The large lead so stepped forward first, sniffing the air as she followed the scent of corn. One by one, big and small, the rest of the herd slowly moved toward the trap. Wild boars possess powerful survival instincts and sharp awareness of their surroundings. But tonight, hunger and the sweet smell of corn outweighed any danger they might have sensed. Guided by the leader, the others followed behind. Without suspicion, without hesitation, they rushed in to enjoy the food. When we were certain the entire herd was inside the trap, suddenly, bang, the final watcher triggered the drop gate. The sharp crash of steel echoed across the forest. In that instant, the quiet woods exploded into chaos. The wild boars panicked, charging in every direction, slamming into the steel fencing, colliding with one another as they tried desperately to escape. The ground was torn apart beneath their powerful hooves. The mesh walls shook violently. The strongest boars attempted to ram the fencing with brute force. but it was all useless against the sturdy, carefully designed steel enclosure. The elasticity of the mesh pushed the powerful animals back each time they lunged. Some of the smaller boars tried to climb or leap over the barrier, but the height of the fence stopped them every time. Panic spread through the herd as they realized they were completely trapped inside a steel prison. In that moment, no one in our group dared to breathe too loudly. Everyone understood. This was a confrontation between the wild survival instincts of the boars and a plan carefully designed by humans. Before dawn broke, we approached the trap. The boars were no longer thrashing wildly as they had during the night. Many were exhausted, breathing heavily. Some stood quietly, their legs heavy with fatigue. Yet their instincts still pushed them to run whenever they sensed movement. Seeing the herd of more than 20 boars captured at once, the farmers finally let out a sigh of relief. Before opening the trap, the team checked every lock and joint again to make sure the structure remained secure. They carefully observed the animals to ensure the herd would not erupt into panic again. Each boar was restrained, following proper safety procedures. Specialized tools were used to prevent injuries, both for the people involved and for nearby livestock. The wild boars were then loaded onto trucks for further handling. Part of the harvest would be shared among the community according to prior agreement. The rest would be processed according to local regulations, ensuring disease control and environmental safety. After everything was finished, the surrounding area was checked one final time. The forest was returned to the quiet state it had before. And when everything was over, everyone understood that the success of the night did not come from luck or individual strength. It came from choosing the right plan from the very beginning. A large net trap, placed in the right location and strong enough to hold an entire herd, prevented the need for countless scatter traps, the kind that only lead to repeated failure. No one forgot that deeper in the forest, there were still other wild boars. But the events of that night had proven something important. When people stand together and choose the right solution, they can protect their crops, reduce damage, and keep the community safe. Once the location was finalized, the team began assembling the trap frame. Posts were driven deep into the ground, and the lower edge of the net was firmly secured to the soil to prevent it from being pushed up. Every detail was checked twice. Even a small gap could allow the entire herd to break free within minutes. When everything was finished, the trap door was left open. We then began the baiting phase. Camera footage recorded an adult boar approaching the trap. It moved slowly, sniffing the air before cautiously stepping inside. Everyone held their breath. Then the trap was triggered. The net closed quickly and cleanly. The boar panicked, turning around to search for an escape, but there was no opening. Just one animal, but enough for us to confirm that the trap structure worked exactly as intended. It was an important test. That success helped us finalize the formula for the first trap. Once we were confident in the system's stability, we continued building additional traps in areas where signs of destruction were most concentrated. Each location was adjusted to fit its terrain, but the core principles remained the same. On a known movement route, natural visual cover nets firmly secured several nights of baiting before activation. Everything was done quietly and patiently. Then night came quickly. At the eastern trap, thermal cameras recorded several adult boars appearing first. They walked straight in, as if already accustomed to entering to feed and leaving afterward. When a number inside was sufficient and no individuals remained outside, the net was triggered. Heavy footsteps pounded the ground as soil sprayed into the air under the infrared glow of the cameras. Solid bodies slammed into the edges of the net, shaking the entire structure. For the first few seconds, everything was chaotic, but the structure held. Several adult boars were now contained inside. At another trap not far away, the situation unfolded very differently. A large herd emerged from the forest edge. They did not rush. The lead animal stopped for a long time, sniffing the air and even circling the edge of the trap. One by one, they stepped inside, but always keeping distance from each other. Time passed painfully slowly. Triggering too early would mean capturing only a few animals. Waiting too long could mean losing the opportunity entirely. Finally, when most of the herd had entered deeply and the last animal had just crossed the net boundary, the signal was activated. The net closed. The entire herd turned in panic. The sound of bodies crashing echoed through the night. But this time, there was no escape.
Nice. There you go.
As morning light appeared, we began checking each trap one by one. The largest trap made everyone pause for a few seconds. Inside was a herd of mixed sizes, adults and juveniles together. Young animals pressed between the larger ones, and the ground beneath them had been torn apart during a night of desperate attempts to escape. At another trap nearby, 3 adult boars had been captured. They remained alert, constantly turning their heads at the sound of movement. We did not rush in. The team maintained a safe distance, inspected the net carefully, observed the situation, and only then proceeded to the next step according to the prepared procedure. After confirming that everything was stable, the captured animals were handled using humane methods, in accordance with local regulations, ensuring safety for everyone involved and avoiding impacts on other wildlife in the area. There was no rushing, no reckless action. Standing among the traps that had just been checked, I realized the most important thing was not the number of animals captured, but the fact that the problem had been controlled properly and at the right moment. If only individual animals were removed, the rest of the herd would quickly return and learn to avoid the traps.
Wild boars are nothing like domestic pigs. A full-grown boar can weigh anywhere from 200 to over 300 pounds. They're fast, highly reactive, and armed with razor-sharp tusks capable of inflicting serious injuries. When panicked or cornered, they can become extremely dangerous. Beyond the direct threat to human safety, wild hogs destroy crops, cause traffic accidents, and carry diseases that can spread to livestock and pets. Even more alarming is their reproduction rate. In a very short time, just a few individuals can explode into a full-blown sounder if left unmanaged. In the past, trapping or removing hogs one at a time was considered a solution. But with today's population size and breeding speed, those methods are proving increasingly ineffective. Wildlife management experts warn that removing only a few hogs often makes the remaining sounder more alert, while the overall population continues to grow. That's why planned, sounder-based management strategies are now being adopted. In many regions, modern trapping systems combined with remote camera monitoring are showing clear results. These systems allow operators to monitor hog activity in real time. Trigger traps only when the entire sounder is inside. Reduce risk to people. Minimize chaos and unnecessary stress. In Texas, one of the hardest hit states, entire sounders have been captured in a single operation, breaking the reproductive cycle before it can restart. Many landowners and wildlife specialists agree. When done correctly, wild hog control does not require reckless or dangerous measures. Boarbuster is one of the systems used across the US as a sounder management solution. The system is built on key principles: open traps that don't alarm hogs at first, remote activation once the full group enters, continuous camera monitoring, maximum safety for surrounding people. This point matters most. Wild hog control is not about sport hunting or violence. It's about protecting people, property, and ecological balance. No one wants animals to suffer, but when a species grows beyond control and becomes a direct threat to communities, doing nothing can lead to far greater consequences. This is no longer just a problem for remote ranches. It's happening in neighborhoods, backyard fences, and places where children play. Without proper management strategies, wild hog numbers in the US will continue to rise, bringing greater risks to both people and the environment. Yet, there is hope. When communities understand the issue, when local authorities and residents work together, and when technology is used responsibly, real progress can be made. After trapping, transport is considered the most critical phase of wild hog management. Every step is carried out carefully and in an orderly manner, with stress and injury risks kept to an absolute minimum. Each hog is guided into reinforced transport crates designed for maximum safety. Every movement is planned, deliberate, and calm, avoiding panic and injury. This is not simply about moving wild hogs. It's a lesson in how humans can manage and coexist responsibly with wildlife. From sudden suburban encounters to responsible management efforts in states like Texas, one message becomes clear. Wild hog management is no longer optional. It is essential for community safety. The actions we take today will determine how safe our environment is tomorrow.